back to the idea of you were mentioning copying and pasting in there. I normally try to recommend tab completion, just because sometimes people do have problems moving the mouse around. I deal with a lot of older people though, and they really have a lot of trouble with the mouse.
Okay.
So tab completion, if you can get that first character or the first couple of characters and then hit tab twice, it will fill the rest in for you.
Yeah.
Right. Also, if you are copying and pasting something with special characters, you do need to put it in double quotes, or else it won't work. Or not double quotes, just quotes, or else it won't work.
Yeah. Well,
that's where the tab completion will actually take care of that for you.
Right. But also, if
the only problem with that I have with recommending tab completion right off is because I've seen people do this. I've watched them do it. Like, you tell them it's case sensitive, and they'll still if it starts with a U, they'll type a lowercase u and it starts with a capital U, and in Linux and Unix, these are different characters. They are not the same. It does not move from uppercase U to lowercase u. It's going to start with the U you told it. and little things like that. As long as you remember that, though, you don't have that problem. It's okay. As far as I know, that little 3-4-step process is the easiest way to do it. The only other thing I went through there, and again, I don't know, the two primary extra commands, as it are, I use with that is -I and -u. And -I for initial install, and -u for when you're doing an update. So it's, in the case of an RPM, it's RPM space -I space the installer, and 6 months, 3 days, 6 months down the road, when a newer version comes out, you replace the -I with a -u, so you're doing an update rather than a full new install, because you want to update the old package that's already installed, and you need to tell it you're doing that.
The only thing I might add to that is most of the times if I'm doing an RPM install from the terminal, I do RPM-IVH or -UVH if you're updating. The V makes it verbose, so you see exactly what it's doing. The H gives it a hash counter, so it actually shows you the progress if it's a large package.
Yeah, with some larger packages, it's useful to see it's
to make sure it's still doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons I like the way the Get OpenOffice installer did that so much, because that has to go through so many steps to do that. It's doing that all manually would kill the average user. Go, forget it. I don't want OpenOffice. I don't want it. I don't need it. It made all these billion steps 3 clicks, as opposed to which I think all the installers need to kind of follow that example, regardless of what happens to OpenOffice. The only other thing, and it's not like there aren't 50 billion tutorials on what we're talking about here, but the one thing I have yet to see a tutorial cover, and I always see Linux chat rooms and forums full with this. A new person, they're like, I did what the thing said, and it didn't do it. And that is that there are 3 main wrappers for installers in Linux. There's Deb, which is Debian/Ubuntu distros. There's RPM, which I believe its roots are in Red Hat and Fedora, but a lot of things use them. PC uses them, Magriva uses them, SUSE uses them. The other one is SH, which I forget which set of distros use SH.
Any distro can. That's a shell script.
Okay, that's right. And I've seen it. If a perfect example of that is in Crossover. The instructions for how to run an installer on the Dream forums, the people who make Crossover, is for shell scripts. So all the instructions say SH. And then they talk about the other commands, and they say the thing, and they don't specify that SH is only if you're running an SH installer. And you need to replace SH with RPM if it's an RPM, and Deb with, and SH or RPM with Deb if it's a Deb installer.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Oh, it's okay, like in the case of PC Linux OS, the default package it's using is an RPM wrapper. All the installers are file name xyz.rpm.
But as I understand, sh is not a wrapper. It's not a package.
No, it's a script that tells it exactly how to install it.
It's a script that tells it how to install, but you're better off to use the deb or RPM. Okay, I violated a technical thing there, but I'm trying to simplify this for a novice user is the thing, and as far as for this, they're interchangeable. You can treat sh like it's, even though yes, it's different.
And there are actually at least two more in addition to that.
Okay, so what are the other
There's a dot bin for a binary and a dot run, which I think is also a shell script. It's just got a different extension on it.
Okay.
But I've seen it pretty frequently.
I would think that the three kind of packages that would be used are RPMs, deb packages, and tarballs. Right?
Well, a tarball you'd have to unzip first, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but that's kind of like, that's the one that Slackware uses, and
Okay. Well, I mean, but can you execute that directly like you can in RPM
basically
or?
just source. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't execute that directly like you can a deb or an RPM, can you?
Well, no, you do have to extract it, but then some of them you could compile in one command. You can make and then choose a certain thing and it'll do it fully. But yeah, it's not. I don't think that there's any one thing that can install the tarball.
Yeah, it's like, and well, that goes to what we were talking about initially, which is you can go all the way back to the source and make and compile it yourself. And on some of these, it's as simple as, like you say, of just typing one or two little commands. It's on a lot of them, it's not this whole big bloated contorted effort where, okay, now my machine is just going to go do stuff. And I've noticed on a lot of those, because it's, just type Command X and Command Y and there it's done. I don't need to go make a wrapper for you or an installer or anything. It's like, but on the same token, this isn't something I recommend a complete novice user do. I recommend somebody get a little more comfortable with Linux before they go into that. I mean, would you send... I feel comfortable sending Grandma into terminal to do like what we were talking about before, because at the end of the day you can break it down into step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and Grandma can follow the steps. She may not understand what the hell she's doing, but she can follow the steps.
As far as the Debian and RPM installers, I generally will tell people just to double click on them because there is a graphical way that it'll happen. And if it's a grandma that's doing it, definitely I tell them.
Yeah, no, and that was what I told this person also. I said usually you can double click on them. However, I have seen the oddball that for some reason or another, the double click doesn't work right. Sometimes it's a permissions error. Sometimes it's something else. Like sometimes it doesn't trigger to ask them to log in as root or something. I've seen it, which is why I think it's important to know how to do it manually if you absolutely have to. If for some reason that's screwed up or it doesn't want to work right with that particular installer.
That's interesting. I wonder why what you're saying would happen, because I'm thinking that the graphical installer for devs and RPMs is just a front, and really everything's happening in the terminal. It's just showing the front of the graphical thing. So I'm wondering why it would work with the CLI and not with the GUI. With GUI, I'm sorry.
For some, I think what it has something to do with is, and this is one of the things in which people would argue Linux is too scattered and too diverse, is in some rare cases you're installing an RPM that's not really 100% intended for your distro. However, it will still work because it's not screwing with anything in particular. And that is the first thing we should notice. We should have noted that before we got into this, is that you install anything outside your repo at your own risk. It's like step 1 before you start any of this should be back up your system or back up or save your settings. I realize that's a little paranoid, and I almost never do it because the odds of it actually crashing your system are bad. And this isn't like it's an issue to Linux. You know, any exe you run in Windows can potentially crash Windows. Any installer you run on a Mac,
A much higher percentage of crash rate, yes.
yeah, any installer you run on a Mac can potentially brick your Mac and force you to have to go reinstall OS 10. And like, this is a problem on every operating system known to man. You're doing something that isn't supported, and as long as the people who made this did their job right, you'll have no problems. But if they screwed up somewhere, you may have a problem. I'd be more concerned about getting malware than I would getting having it crash my system. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that bugs me about a lot of the themes stuff, especially in GNOME. They're installers rather than just being a download file, which I have really mixed feelings about. In fact, more than once, although it gets taken down very quickly, there have been malware themes in GNOME, in the GNOME themes. It's their life expectancy, because of the open source nature of everything there, is a day or two, but still thousands of people download them. So if a theme is brand new today, I kind of recommend, no matter how much you want it, especially if it's a installer, if it's a deb installer or something, because to run that you have to log in as root and give it full access and other things. You sit back a little bit. It's the GNOME usually is pretty good about catching them in 72 hours at most. I've never seen one that was up there longer than that, and it doesn't happen very often. But as Linux gets more popular, we will start to get more and more. Oh, look, we can fuck with these people. It's just... Anyways, I'm not sure there's really anything else to say on this topic.